I'm Sheila. I am the branch manager at Vilonia Public Library, part of the Faulkner County Library System. And today we are going to make shortbread cookies for Valentine's Day. So for shortbread, you only need 4 ingredients. We have 2 sticks of butter in the bowl. You're going to need 2 cups of all-purpose flour, a half a cup of brown sugar, and just like a pinch of salt. So we're going to cream the butter and the brown sugar together. And I already have that pre-measured. We're going to scrape it a little bit just to make sure we get it all incorporated. If your brown sugar might have a little lump to it, it should whip out. So now we're going to put in the flour. And you'll need 2 cups of flour, about 2 cups. If you put a little too much in there and your dough's a little crumbly, I have added a little bit of liquid. You could probably use water and then a pinch of salt, and I don't usually pinch. A whole palmful is a pinch. And then we're going to slowly, it should be coming together. If you don't have a big mixer, you can try this with a hand mixer, or you could even do it by hand. You don't want it too dry. Now, a shortbread is a more dense cookie than, say, a sugar cookie. Totally your preference. You can really taste the butter, so I suggest go for buy the butter. And then you would get a piece of parchment. It's not wax paper. You could use wax paper, but you don't want to bake with wax paper. Okay, so this is what your dough should look like after you kind of get it all together. And I have it's called a Joseph rolling pin, and you can change the thickness of your project cookie, whatever, by doing this. Before I had one of these fancy rolling pins, I just had a plain rolling pin. You really want your cookies to be the same thickness. So you could get maybe a couple of rubber scrapers if you have them and set them here and use the parchment paper to get it flat. And then I kind of ditched the parchment paper to go with the basic rolling pin. And if you have your little rubber scrapers on the side, you're not gonna go too far down. You're not gonna have too thin of a cookie. If you don't wanna make homemade dough, when we get ready to decorate, you could buy the canned stuff at the store and just roll it out. This is really easy dough. And let me tell you, it's, like I said, it's worth using real butter. During Christmas, I made shortbread, a cranberry orange shortbread. I zested an orange and I put chopped up craisins really fine, and I stuck it in the dough. And it was delicious. Okay, so if you see your stuff sticking a little bit, you could use flour. You can use a little bit of flour. I wouldn't use a lot of flour. These are my cookie cutters. I have even great big ones you can make a cookie, but if you're going to serve quite a few people, you're going to want to try to do a smaller cookie. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and cut our cookies shapes out, and then we're going to put them back on the parchment paper, and we're going to put them in the freezer. And that will stiffen them back up, and that keeps your cookie cutter shape. And then these scraps that I have, we are going to re-roll. But you want to bake these while they're frozen. So you're going to cut all your cookies out. You're going to put this in the freezer for at least 10 minutes. Spread them out, bake them in a 325-degree oven for around 12 minutes because they're frozen. So we have got our cookies baked. They should look something like this. When they first come out of the oven, I usually take the back of a spatula and I run it over the top while they're hot because they'll bubble up and you want a smooth cookie. But you could also decorate the backside. It's totally flat. I like to make a glaze, and all you need is 1 bag, 2 pounds of powdered sugar. We're going to use a 1/4 cup of corn syrup and a half a cup of water, and maybe just a tad bit of salt. I also got my whisk out for this because I just like using it better. So anyway, we're going to put this whole bag in here. We're going to put, it should be a half a cup of water. So we're going to put some of that in there, but we're not going to put the whole thing because you can always add more. We're going to mix that up first, lightly. Now, we're going to get our corn syrup out. This leaves the cookie with a nice shine. All right, and you see it's thick, so we can thin it with more water, but you don't want to put too much. You probably put an extract in here too. I like almond extract, it's great. And I would put like a teaspoon of whatever flavor. That will thin it just a little, but it wouldn't do it a lot. Okay, so clearly that half a cup of water is probably for 1 pound of sugar. You do not want your icing too thick. I'm gonna take that off for a second. 10-second icing is when you dip a spoon or something, you let it fall back and you count, and then it disappears. Well, clearly that is still there, so I don't have enough liquid. But if you get it too thin, it'll fall off your cookie. So we're gonna add a little more water. So now when I lift the ball, you start counting 9, 10. Still too thick. Oh, yep, I think I did too much that time. That's why you don't put too much water in. Since we have too thin of an icing, we're going to put some of it in a bowl. And we have these gels. We are going to start with like a red and a pink. That's a pink. And we got red. And then you're just gonna get your knife and you're just gonna give it a little swirl. And then get ready to dip your cookie. You're gonna let it dip and you're gonna have a pretty swirl. Now you see how it runs off the side? That's because I got it too thin. When you're doing a glaze, you do want a thinner icing. Okay, so we're going to decorate. Now I have thickened my icing so that when you start counting, it should disappear. This icing sat overnight, so it's just a tad bit thicker, but we're gonna rock with it because we do not want it too thin. So I'm gonna fill a bag that I have in a glass because it's just easier to do. And it'll be about halfway. So you fill up your bag, put it in this glass, squeeze it all down, and this is a nice tall bag where you can tie a knot in it. You do not want to leave your bag undone, especially if you're letting kids help you, because I have done that before and we've had a mess. So there's our white. So we're going to color one red, the other one pink. You're going to get your knife. I have a whole bunch of these disposable knives. We're going to stir that. It's a pretty, pretty pink. I'm going to stir. I'm going to pour it in. I'm going to tie it in a knot. We've got our red. Stir that up. I added a little extra red. As this sits, like maybe tomorrow, you would see that this is actually a little darker. So if you go ahead and you decorate your cookie, just know it may be a tad bit darker. I'm going to take your scissors and you're going to cut off a little tip. Don't want to cut off too much so that your icing will flow. So let's start with a white one. So you can keep that twisted. You're going to, this icing is thick enough that it shouldn't fall off the side. So I use it for my outline and my flood. And you try not to get too close to the edge otherwise, and then you just flood it. So you're gonna flood, you're not gonna flood too much. You're going to use a toothpick. On cookie shows, they call it a scribe. You don't have that, use a toothpick. But this is gonna help you slide your icing where you want it to go. And if it slides off the side a little bit, just run it across there. This hardens up sets up pretty quick. Now while the cookie's wet, you could sprinkle sprinkles on it, maybe on one side. So we have some white ones, which is gonna make it shiny. And if you want, you can run your little scribe down through there and look like a little broken heart or something. If you want that to stay, you would have to wait till it dried a little bit. I'm going to flood another cookie. I'm not gonna go too far to the edge. And if you didn't want it to spread, you might give that, I don't know, 30 seconds, 20 seconds to kind of like set up, and it keeps it from falling off. So you see how that just sort of flooded on its own. I didn't even really have to pick at it. So while it's wet, I want to do some more stuff and it'll flood in there. So I'm gonna put these little dots on here. I'll put dots all around the cookie. All right, so you take your little tool and you're gonna run it around while that's wet. That will harden like that and be smooth. But you don't have to do the fancy cookies. We're gonna go back and we're going to glaze a cookie. That was the thinner icing. And give it a twist. And you can do all your cookies this way if you want. There, so as it sits, it's gonna roll off. This is the one we did earlier. Right after we striped it, you see the colors. I think it's a really cool looking cookie. If you want to add your sanding sugar while it's wet, that'll just make it a little more sparkly when it dries. Totally do it while it's wet. It won't stick once it's dry. If you're taking these somewhere, they will harden up and they will dry. Usually it takes a good 24 hours for it to totally dry, but it'll start crusting over and dry within an hour. But if you were going to stack them and pack them, you would probably want to let them sit for like a day. And just let it sit. You're good. But you have to let that crust over. You see it's still a little tacky, but anything I add to it is going to stay raised. It will stay up. It will crust over, but it'll stay above the cookie. Add little scrolly things. If your icing's thick enough, you could do a lace border and it should stay. Really matters if your cookie tastes good. Kids love this. Make up some icing, put them in bags, and let them go to town. They don't have to get fancy. I'd say it didn't take 10 minutes to make that dough. This is the time-consuming part, especially if you're kind of artistic and you want your stuff to look perfect. But just remember, you're going to eat it. It doesn't have to be perfect. You could do this. Anybody can do this. I hope you enjoyed the video. This is what your cookies could look like if you maybe dip them. This was a little bit where you run your icing through it, but it was a little thin, so don't make your icing too thin. We may do another tutorial later with some different cookies, but I appreciate everybody tuning in. I guarantee you these are the best cookies you'll ever do. You watch that video, it doesn't take 10 minutes to make that dough. You can do this. The most time-consuming part of it is doing the fancy decorating. You can make it as fancy or as simple. That was very simple as you want it to be.